Hello?
Yeah, Manoj, you are the
Yeah.
host now.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Hello.
Good evening, sir.
Hi, Anurag. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So let's wait for some time for everyone to join.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Hello.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sir.
Hello, sir.
Yes. So let's get started now. Okay. So did you guys read the questions that were posted on the classroom?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. First, let me share my screen.
So I personally didn't get much time to think about them. So
No worries. Good.
Okay.
So do you have any questions that you want to talk about? So okay, in case you have, then let's go over this once and then we'll come to your, so keep your questions. We'll come to them. Okay. Okay. So this was the first question. Okay. That was given to you. So can you see the screen?
Yes, sir.
yes, sir.
Okay. So this is the problem. Okay. So let's say you have a resource. Okay. For instance, a classroom. So right now I'm reading the question. You can also have a look at the problem set if you want to. So there is a resource. Okay. Let's say classroom. And you have various requests. Okay. For people who want to use this classroom to, for example, take a class. Okay. So there are n requests. Okay. And how are the requests given to you? They are given with a starting time and a finishing time. Okay. So this is like the first request that is given to you. This will be your second request, and so on. You are given n requests. Okay. Now, see, if these requests were not overlapping, then you could allot your classroom to each of these classes, right, without having any conflict. But the issue is that there might be an overlap between the given requests. Okay. So for example, this request might start at 10 a.m. Okay, end at 12. I don't know, AM or PM. Okay, let's call it AM. Other might start at 11 AM. Okay, and it will end at 1 PM. So there is a conflict. Okay. So you cannot allot your single resource that was available to you, your classroom, to both of these requests, right? Okay. So now the goal is to accommodate, and we call these resources to be conflicting. So what we want to do is we want to accommodate maximum number of requests such that they are non-conflicting. Should be non-conflicting. Is the problem clear to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Good. Okay. So how do we solve this?
Sir,
Any ideas?
hello. Sir, are we maximizing the number of requests accommodated? But
Exactly.
we could also have maximized the amount of time spent in class.
Yeah. So see what amount of time spent, but the goal here is to maximize the number of resources.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you want to maximize the amount of time, okay, we'll come. Okay. So what we'll do is that then we can assign a weight. Okay. Just a small digression. We can assign a weight to each of these requests, which will be F1 minus S1. Okay. F2 minus S2. Fn minus Sn. Okay. So this is the amount of time that the first request will spend in your class, right? This is the amount of time that the second request will spend in the class, and so on. Okay. And now your question, where you asked, we want to maximize the number of time. Okay. In some sense, we want to maximize the total weights. Okay. So now there is this additional weight that has been allotted to each of these resources, and we want to maximize it. So that is the second part of the question. We'll come to it. Okay. Did I answer your question?
Yes, sir.
Okay. For now, we want to maximize the number of requests. Okay. So how do we solve it?
Sir.
Mm-hmm.
Sir, if we consider the problem with the weights, and if we put the weights equal to 1, then it just becomes the first problem. So if we
Exactly.
can give the complicated, like the second problem solution, then the first one is already solved.
If
So-
you could solve the second one, your first one is already solved.
Right. So
Mhm.
if we just look at the second problem, it's quite similar to the knapsack problem that we solved yesterday,
Okay.
where we consider an
But
enumeration.
see, but what
for-
happens is that when you try to solve a more general problem, okay, you might have
Right.
to spend more time, right? Of course, your general solution also solves the specific case. Okay. But
Okay, right.
right. So
So maybe there's a simpler solution for this first problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
So a simpler solution. So that's what I'm looking for. Of course, we'll discuss this. So yeah, but just any ideas how? I mean, actually, I'm looking for a greedy solution.
Okay, not a recursion based or a.
Yeah, not a dynamic programming.
Okay.
Okay. So let me just give this greedy solution for now. Okay.
So, sir, you can start with.
Go ahead.
No. We may start with like we will schedule, like we will allot a class. Like start with the earliest time and prefer shorter classes. Like I mean, what I'm trying to say is, let's say I have a 24 hours duration, so I'll start with start looking at earliest times and shortest durations, and
Okay.
start assigning them and start clubbing them. So my idea is to like start.
Earliest which time? Earliest starting time.
So yeah, so my goal is like 24 hours period. I have to fit in the maximum. So let's say I go for like something like that, like earliest time. I'm not sure. I'm just guessing.
Okay.
So earliest time and shortest intervals type. Like, either I something like that.
Okay. So see,
Something
one thing that I want to point out in your in the attempt in your approach is that you gave two conditions, right? First was both the earliest time, let's say minimum starting time, just for the sake of argument.
Yes, sir.
And minimum duration. So you wanted to choose your greedy strategy according to both of them, right?
Yeah, maybe start with like have them arranged based on with the basis of their durations, and pick the one with the earliest starting time. Something like that.
Okay. So that is an attempt, but that should not work. Okay. So
No, I'm guessing. I'm trying to guess. Like
good. Yeah. That's great. Yeah. But in response to that, what I'm saying is that we can prove that is not going to work. Okay. And I'll point you to the place where you can check it out. Okay. Fine?
Sure, sir. Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, but
Sure.
for now, let us look at a greedy solution to this problem. Okay.
Sir.
Yeah.
Sir, if we look at the the demand which has the earliest finishing time,
Exactly. Yeah. Good.
and then just eliminate all those intervals which are not compatible with this one, and
Okay.
then continue the process, would that
Yeah.
be a greedy algorithm?
Yeah, that would be a greedy algorithm. So what is your intuition behind this algorithm? What is your idea?
So the idea is that if you take the earliest finishing time,
Right.
then you're maximizing the range of requests that you can still incorporate with in the set that is left. But
Yeah. So
it
does your
does
idea also
require-
work with the earliest starting time?
No, the earliest starting time could be a problem, because what if one of the requests was just the whole day, from the
Exactly.
start of the day to the end of the day?
Yeah. Okay. So that is a very good intuition. In fact, that is the algorithm that I want to give you. Okay. And we'll go over a sketch of the proof. Okay? So this is after going over this, you can fill over the details yourself. Okay. But this is the main idea of a greedy algorithm and how you will prove the correctness. So let's start from here. Okay, so this is the statement of the problem. So you are given a set of intervals, or maybe let's call it requests. Okay. And you want to allocate a resource such that you want to maximize the number of requests. You want to cater the maximum number of requests. Okay. And as someone pointed out, sorry, I cannot figure out your name. Okay. So this is the greedy algorithm. You choose a request with the smallest finishing time. Okay. So these are the finishing times. F1, F2 through Fn. Okay. You choose a request with the smallest finishing time. Then you remove all the requests that are in conflict with that, the one that you chose. Okay. Fine. And then you repeat the process. And after repeating the process, you will output a set A of requests. Okay. And we'll argue later on the correctness of the set A. So is the algorithm clear to everyone?
Yes, the algorithm is clear.
Okay, good. Yeah, but now comes the hard part. Okay, to argue the correctness. So often in greedy algorithms, correctness is the more difficult thing to prove. Okay. So how will you prove the correctness? So let us say the set that you have given as output. Okay, this is the same set that you gave as output was this set. So this set had k elements, I1 through Ik, whose starting time was Si1, Fi1, Si2, Fi2 till Sik, Fik. So how many elements does the set A has? What is the cardinality of A?
K.
Good. Okay. And now we want to say that, okay, this A is the best one, right? So in order to do so, let us consider the optimum set. We don't know anything about this optimum set, okay? Right? But we do know that it has a certain set of requests in it, and there are M of them, okay? So the requests are Sj1, J1, Sj2, Fj2, okay, till Sjm, Fjm. What is the cardinality of this set O, the optimal set?
M.
M. Okay. And now what is our goal? We want to show that this should be K. Okay. So we correct it. We want to show that K is equal to M. Okay. If we can show this, then our algorithm is correct, right?
Yes, sir.
Makes sense? Good. Okay. And the general idea to prove this, which is also useful in other greedy algorithms that you'll encounter, is that you want to show that your greedy strategy is always ahead of the optimal solution. Fine. Okay. So what you want to show is that pick any R and K. Okay. So R is going to be, okay, R is just smaller than K. Okay. Then the finishing time of your Rth request is at most the finishing time of your kth request. Let's think about this for a second.
So could you please repeat?
Yeah, so just look at the statement that we would like to prove. Okay, if R is less than K, then you if R is less than K, say let's say that R, for example, let's take R to be 1 and K to be 2. Okay, then we want to say that F of I1, the finishing time, okay, that is there in your set A, corresponding to the first index, the Rth index, okay, that is smaller than the finishing time that you have in your optimal set, corresponding to the kth index, which is the second index. Okay. This is what we want to show.
So it's J, not I.
Where
Because
is
in the
J?
statement,
Yeah, here it should be actually J.
Okay.
We want to compare the finishing time in A and O. Okay.
So how are we making this? Oh, okay. So this is just for all.
Something we
RK.
want to prove.
Okay, okay. There is no correspondence as such. This is just R and K are two selections such that R is lesser than K, and we are trying to prove this claim.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
Okay, so everyone should just think about this for a second and ask any questions if this makes sense. This claim, this is statement of the claim, if this makes sense.
So, sir, here the K is the thing that we calculated from the algorithm, the size of A, and f of jk is an element of O.
F of jk is the finishing time, of the kth element in O. Okay.
Kth element in O. So, okay, so we are assuming that M is greater than K.
So, okay, so consider this. To understand this, just pick the same element. Okay. Pick the same element. Let's say 5. Okay, so there is a fifth element over here. There is a fifth element over here. Okay, in A. Okay. So this is less than equal to, right? Let's just consider equal.
So because we know that the fi j sequence is anyway increasing, so if we can prove for this equality, then we're done, right?
Yeah, that is the idea. So we're coming to that, but for now, let us just understand the statement of this theorem for everyone. Okay. So now we consider the fifth element that is in this set that you got out of your algorithm, and consider the fifth element in your optimal set. What is the finishing time of the fifth element in your in the output of your algorithm? It is f I5, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what is the finishing time of your fifth element in your optimal set? It is f j5.
Right.
Okay. And this statement that we want to prove says that fi5 is smaller than fj5.
Yes, sir. So we are assuming K equal to 5 in this case. So
Yeah. We are assuming r equal to k equal to 5 in this case.
yes, sir. We cannot say for, so if K is greater than 5, we cannot claim this thing. We just, because we work on a increasing thing and K would be the maximum. IK would be, FIK would be the maximum thing. Yes, sir.
No. So this is for all rk, right? For all rk that satisfy this relation.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes, sir. I get it.
Okay. Fine. And this now the rest of this will be left as an exercise because we want to focus on the DP part, dynamic programming part. Okay. So in order to show this claim, okay, you use the property of your greedy algorithm. So just observe that your greedy algorithm does this, right? It picks elements, picks the requests in order of their finishing time.
Sir,
okay.
Hello. Sir, sir, if
I can hear you.
If I5 is less than equal to, if J5 is the smaller one between the two, then the greedy would have picked the J5. So
yeah, then you would have an equal.
So it can't be lesser, so it has to be greater than.
Yeah, I mean, see, that I'm leaving the proof to you to formalize it. But the proof is not much more than what you're already saying. The proof is very simple. Okay. Okay. So what I'm saying is that this is the main observation that you need to make. You need to choose a correct greedy strategy. Okay. You need to prove a correct technical claim, and the proof then naturally follows. It's very simple, straightforward argument, which I'm not going to cover for now. Okay. So we'll go on to the dynamic programming part of this problem. Generalization of this problem, we'll look in the dynamic programming setting. Okay. So for now, is the greedy strategy clear to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Good. Okay. And then the main claim that you need to prove, that is clear to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, as an exercise, you need to do two things. First, prove this claim. The proof is very simple. It follows from your algorithm. Okay. And then second, prove k equal to m. Once you have proved this claim, then proving k equal to m is a simple proof of prove by contradiction. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So this is as left. I'm leaving as an exercise to prove this. Now let us go on to a variant of this problem. Weighted interval scheduling. So since all of you have seen knapsack already, so this will we can you can think of as a recalling the same thing. Okay. So I'll go over this a bit quickly then. Okay. Yeah,
Okay,
so
sir.
stop me whenever you have any questions. Fine. So now the setting has changed, right? Initially, we were given a set of intervals, set of n intervals, and our goal was to maximize the number of requests that we could accommodate. Okay. Now, the intervals have value or weights associated with them. Okay. And we want to choose, the goal is similar. We want to choose a non-conflicting subset of maximum value. Okay. For example, as someone pointed out here, okay, so these are the n requests. Now each of them have some weight associated with them. Let me choose this notation: V, V1, V2, okay, and Vn. Okay. The definition of non-conflicting remains the same. Okay, so these two intervals are in conflict because the finishing time of one is more than the starting time of the other interval. So these two are in conflict. So again, the goal is the same. We want to choose a non-conflicting subset. Okay, but now we don't want to maximize the number. We want to maximize the total weight. Okay, of the non-conflicting subset that we have chosen. Clear? Problem is clear?
Yes, sir.
And if we choose VIs to be 1, then this problem is just the problem that we just looked at. Fine. But we want to solve the general problem now. Okay. So now here is one more exercise for you all. Show that the greedy algorithm that we looked in the previous slide does not work here. Okay. So what does this mean? How will you show this? Okay. When I ask you, so we already looked at a greedy algorithm, right? This was our greedy algorithm. Okay. And we can prove the correctness of this algorithm. So when I ask you to show that the previous algorithm does not work,
Now we
when
can give a counter example.
Exactly. So you have to come up with a simple example, instance of the problem, such that when you run your previous algorithm on that instance, right, your answer becomes incorrect. Your answer is incorrect. Okay. Make sense?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Good. Yeah.
Hello.
So now let us solve this problem. So this problem is called weighted interval scheduling. Okay, so the previous problem that we solved was called interval scheduling problem. Okay, we were given a set of intervals, and we wanted to allot a resource to those intervals. Okay, and so we were scheduling. We coming up with a scheduling for those intervals. Now these intervals have weights, and this problem, if you like look in your textbooks, this problem is called weighted interval scheduling. Okay. Okay, before moving further, so let me just point out one thing. If you want to read more about the interval scheduling problem and the various greedy strategies and why they do not work, okay, then you can look at one of the resources to look at is a book by Kleinberg and others. Algorithm Design is the name of the book. So you look at the first chapter, they are giving some greedy strategies and explaining why those strategies are not working. Okay. Yeah, but now let's move on to weighted interval schedule. Okay. So the problem statement is clear to everyone, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Please ask if there is any question. Because problem should be clear to everyone before we move further. Okay, no questions? Okay, good. So, okay, so now what we are going to do, we are going to solve this problem. And in order to do that, we are going to make some simplifying assumptions and set some notations. Okay, all of these things can be done very quickly. Okay, when I say very quickly, it means very efficient algorithms can achieve this. Okay, so first we are going to assume that the requests are sorted in increasing order of finishing time. Okay, so recall that the requests were given to you as follows: S1, F1, S2, F2, okay, and so on. Sn, Fn. Each of these requests had weight associated with them. Okay, and we are assuming that the requests are sorted in increasing order of the finishing time. Okay, so F1 is less than F2, okay, and so on. Okay, now comes an important notation that will stay with us for the following 3-4 slides. This notation Pj. Okay, so what is Pj? I'll define this next. Okay, so now you consider the jth request. Okay, now whenever we talk about the requests, so we are assuming this ordering of the requests, right? So now you consider the jth request. Okay, then Pj is the largest index that is smaller than I, such that the intervals I and j are compatible. Okay, so what does this mean? Okay. So let us say that jth request is sitting over here somewhere. Okay, and let us say that Sj was 100. Okay, and the finishing time was 1000. Fine.
That would be I or J.
Where?
So Pi would be, so because we are fixing J, right? So Pi would be the largest index.
No, so it is a function of j, right? Okay, so let's look at an example. It will become clear. Okay. So let's look at an example. If you still have question, we can talk about it.
Oh yeah, yes. Sir. Oh, it's a function of J. Yeah, yes, sir.
Yeah.
I was
So
thinking.
let's look at S7, F7. Okay, which was, let's say, given to us as 100 and 1000. Okay. We also had S6, F6. We also had S5, F5. Okay. So now let's say S6 was we want to keep it to be 100, so let's keep it. So, okay, 90, 120, and F5 was okay. So what is P7?
5.
So P7 is the interval which is smaller than 7. Okay, the largest interval which is smaller than 7, that is compatible with the 7th request. Okay, which is 5 in this case. What is P6?
Also 5.
Okay, good. Is this clear to everyone?
Yes.
Okay. Now it is easy to check that P, this array, if you want to make an array P1 to Pn, can be efficiently computed. Okay. So from now on, we are going to assume that Pj's are available to us. Clear?
Okay.
Sir, by efficient computation, what do you mean? Like, what should be the time complexity?
Yeah. So see, when we say efficient computation, we mean that in this context, okay, in the context that we are talking about. So we have also assumed that these are sorted, right? Okay.
The sorting can be done in n log n time.
Yeah, sorting can be done in n log n time, but let us assume that they are given to us as sorted requests for now. We don't have to spend time to do that. Fine. Okay, once you are given this, your request has a sorted.
And to create the array P, like
Order
Okay.
n, this can be done, right? P, the array P can be created in order n time, right?
So because this is an increasing array, right? And so we just need a counter
Mhm.
to
Yeah, I'll leave
calculate.
at this point. I will leave it for you guys to figure it out.
Okay. Yes.
By some simple tricks, you can compute it in order n time. Fine.
Yes, sir.
Good. Okay. So now let us see what is the recurrence relation for solving this problem. Okay. Right. So optimum value at j. So let's say you were given j requests, right? And you wanted to find out a non-conflicting set of maximum value. Okay. So let me write these things here. Okay. Given j requests, want to find non-conflicting subset of maximum value. Okay. And let, in this case, optimum be represented by opt j. Okay. So the definition of opt j is clear to everyone, right?
Yes, sir.
Good.
So
Okay.
opt j is the optimum set that we can find in the first j request, right?
Yeah.
So the first j in the sorted order.
Sorted order of the finishing time.
Right. Okay.
Okay. So that is opt j. Opt j is the value of the value of your optimum set, right? Okay. And now two things can happen when you want to compute opt j. Then two things can happen. So either you keep the two cases. First case is that your jth request is in the optimum. And the second case is that jth request is not in optimum. Okay. So these are the only two cases that are possible, right? Make sense?
Yes, sir.
Any questions? So this is the crucial part of this algorithm. So if anybody has any questions, they should ask. Okay, so I'm assuming no questions. So only two cases are possible, that the jth request, either it is part of the optimum solution or it is not a part of the optimum solution. Okay. If jth request is not the part of your optimum solution, okay, then what is the value of opt j? It is just the optimum of j minus 1 elements, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. On the other hand, if the jth request is in opt j, okay, then you know that the value of that jth element has contributed to the value of the optimum, right? Okay. And further,
Yes, sir.
other than your jth element, what is present in opt j? Okay. The thing that is present in opt j is the optimum value of the intervals that did not conflict with your jth interval, right? Which is opt of pj.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So just think about this for a second, all of you. If this is clear, then we'll move further.
we are just selecting the previous non-conflicting interval.
Exactly. If your jth element is already in your optimum, right, then you have to just look at the optimum of the remaining things that you can possibly choose. Right, and those are exactly the things that do not conflict with your jth interval, which is given by index pj. Okay. Right, so recall this pj was the index of the largest element that was smaller than j and did not conflict with your jth interval, right? Any questions?
No, sir, it makes sense.
Okay, good. Okay, so what is a simple recursive solution for this problem? It's given here. So this is your simple recursive algorithm that does the job. Okay, and okay, so one more thing, our goal is to find opt of n, right? Fine. So here is your algorithm to compute opt of j. Okay, this is our base case. If j is 0, then you just give out 0. Okay, else you just give the maximum of these two quantities. Okay, fine. But as all of you already know, if you go for a recursive solution for this problem, okay, the time taken will be exponential in the size of the input. Okay, so that is not a good way to solve the problem. Okay, and so this observation comes to rescue us. Okay, the observation is very simple fact. Just notice that this recursion only requires solution to n or n plus 1 different subproblems. Okay, so see, when you call this, here is the place where recursion is taking, right? So here you had to call this function opt. Okay, here you had to call this opt with certain value of pj. Okay, which depends on j. Okay, and other time you had to call this again this function with certain value of j minus 1, right? So how many different optimization problems are you going to solve? Okay, you're going to solve opt 0, opt 1, opt 2 till opt n minus 1, right? So this is
Yes,
all
sir.
you need to solve. Okay,
Yes, sir.
yeah, so the main idea is if you can efficiently store. Okay, so these are just n problems, so of course you can efficiently store. So if you can store the solution of these sub problems, okay, and furthermore, if you access these solutions a small number of time, high level intuition, then you can solve this your given problem efficiently. Okay, so the idea is store the solution of these problems in memory. Okay, so let's see how we do that. Okay, idea is clear to everyone?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
So first step is to come up with a recurrence. Okay, then you need to identify the subproblems. Okay, and then you need to say that, okay, now I want to store my subproblems and use their solutions. Okay, instead of making recursive call, you'll allot a memory to store the solution and call that memory to get these answers. So let's see how we do that in this case. Okay, here we just make an array. Let's call this array m. Okay, this array has n plus 1 elements, and the jth element mj is going to store the value of opt j. Fine. And now we have an iterative algorithm to compute the value of opt j. Okay, so maybe just to avoid confusion, let me call it k, because mk is going to store the value of opt k. Okay, and now here is our algorithm. Okay, we want to compute opt j, just like in the last slide. Here we are coming with a efficient algorithm now, which will prove. Okay, so if j is 0, then we return 0. Okay, this is our base case. Okay, If you have already filled your memory M, then you just return the value from the memory. Then you want to use it, right? Otherwise, you want to update the value in your memory. Okay, and then you want to say that, okay, the jth element of memory is going to be the maximum over the same recurrence that we looked at last time. Okay. After doing this update, you return this value. Okay, now have a look at the algorithm. This algorithm.
So
Hmm.
how are we calling? Okay, so don't we want to do this in ascending order of j, so that we know that opt of pj and opt of j minus 1 is always available?
So you are saying that do you want to incrementally make this entire going from j minus 1? Do you want to do it or not, right?
So I'm saying, can't we just find out opt 0, then opt 1, then opt 2, and so on in ascending order?
Yeah, but you don't need to, right? Because you're this first step of the algorithm, right? Here.
Right.
I mean, look at the second step actually. Second step of your algorithm. So let's say you called opt 10 directly. Okay.
Okay.
Then it will spend certain amount of time to fill from opt 0 till opt 9, right?
Right.
And then it will come at this step here and return you the value of opt 10. Okay. And now let's say you called opt 20. Okay. Then when you call opt 20, then for the first 10 instances, first 10 runs, your algorithm will always stop here. Okay. At this, it will always return the value of M0 till M10. Okay. Since that was already filled in your array.
So you're saying when we've called opt 10, we first filled in the first 9 values, and then but then, so isn't that the same as doing it in ascending order?
Yeah,
Because-
exactly. You can do either way.
Okay.
This is just the way that I wrote this, but you can start from j equal to, so let's say you want to find out the value of j, you can start from j equal to 0 up to j, right? And
Right.
then incrementally fill your array, this array M.
Okay.
That is
And
also perfectly.
the need to do this dynamically is because in simple recursion we would have higher connectivity of the recursion call.
No. See, so let's say you wanted to do this simple recursion, the thing that is written here. Okay.
Right.
So let me make some space. Okay. This will work. So let's say you wanted
So
to do
remove the second line, it will become a recursive algorithm. Just remove mj not equal to 5, it will become a recursive algorithm. So the point
is this visible? Like just this part that is here, written scribbled here, this part? Or is it too small?
So it's understandable.
Yeah. So I if I understand the question correctly, then let's just see how this algorithm works. Okay, you called this opt j, right? Your opt j calls opt pj, right? Okay, and also calls opt j minus 1. It has to compute both of them in order to find the value of max, right? Opt j minus 1. And then it calls a bunch of things. This calls a bunch of things. Okay, so there might be, see, these recursive calls happen one after other, right?
Yes, sir.
But the observation is that, see, this opt pj might also happen somewhere down the line here.
Right. So there is a higher connectivity in that sense. So we're trying to do it dynamically.
Yeah, so there is a higher redundancy. Okay. The problems that you have already solved, you're solving them again and again.
Right. Yes. So this clause of if mj is not equal to 5, then return mj. This sort of a clause can always make any recursion algorithm a very efficient dynamic programming algorithm, right?
No,
I mean, so but can't this kind of a clause be used in other DP problems that we've already seen?
So this is just a way to handle a particular Yeah, so I mean, I've just chosen to wrote it like this. Okay. So what it is just saying is that if you have not already filled, if you have already filled the jth place in your memory M, okay, then just use this answer. Okay, you have already calculated it correctly, so use this answer. Okay, this is what it is saying. There's nothing special about this clause.
Yes.
But sir, I'm saying that let's look at the Bellman-Ford algorithm, which is also a DP. So in that case also, if we want to, if we've written the recursion for the distance there, and we just add this clause before we do the update, wouldn't that become a DP version of that of the recursion algorithm in Bellman-Ford?
So yeah, I mean, I think if you are talking at an intuitive level, it makes sense. But so we have to be careful also, right? Whether where you want to add this clause, you want to add it here, you want to add it here. Okay, changes everything. Okay, so
Right.
yeah, okay.
Sir, actually, is it yet complete? Like after calling that routine, we have to call that opt function like for 0 and then 1 and then 2. Like we cannot call it first for 1 and then 0, right? Because
Just
in
call
the
it for
case-
opt n. Okay, call it for opt n.
No,
Fine.
sir, in the third step, like, okay, so first we
Uh-huh.
check if j is equal to 0 or not. And then we check if mj is empty or not. And then we go to mj equals max vj plus opt of pj, right? Like,
So
so
see, just
pj is smaller than j. So if we have not filled that smaller entries before, then we will not get any value at that pj level, right?
So question is, how do you analyze this opt n? Let's say we just call this directly, right? The question is, how do you analyze this algorithm? Because now to analyze this algorithm, you look at your memory. Okay, M0 to n. Okay, fine, and look at how many times you call this memory. Okay, how many times you touch this memory is going to be an upper bound in our algorithm. Because other things, this step is constant, right? This step is constant. Here is the only place where recursive call is happening. This step is the last step is constant, right? So the only recursive call is happening over here, and the way to upper bound your running time of this algorithm is to look at the memory that you have created. How many times are you touching different elements of your memory? Okay, fine.
So,
No,
so if
yes, so that is fine. I was not saying that. I was saying like, okay, so let's say n is 5, okay, n equals 5, and we directly called opt 5. Then what will that algorithm do? First check if 5 is equal to 0. That is not, so it won't return 0. And in the next like
Your algorithm will come over here directly.
yeah, algorithm will come over here directly. But then suppose p of 5 is, let's say, 3, okay. Then okay, so here it needs, okay, so it will again call opt of 3. Okay.
So it will see it will yeah. So what I'm saying, don't go into recursion. Don't start making these recursive trees. Analyze this algorithm. Don't analyze it like that. Okay.
Okay.
Just see how many times this algorithm is going to touch your memory. Okay, or how many elements of the memory you have not filled at a particular point. Okay.
so the
Fine.
algorithm could be accessing a certain element of the memory multiple times, but it will only have to calculate it once, right? That's the efficiency that we've introduced using this clause of if mj is
yeah. So I suggest that you think a little bit over this. Okay, let me cover one more problem in the 5 more minutes that we have. Okay.
okay, sir.
Yeah. So this is not going to be tough for you guys. You can do it easily. If any problem, then just post it on the classroom. Send me an email. We can figure it out. Fine. Okay, but that is not the difficult part. Okay. Just try to do. Else let us know. Okay. The other problem that was given in your assignment was this independent set entry. Okay. So all of you know the definition of independent of the independent set.
Yes, sir.
So let's recall once. So given a graph, a subset of the vertices S is an independent set if there are no edges in S. Okay, fine. So see, later on, you will see that for a general graph, finding the size of the largest independent set is very hard. Okay, later on we'll formalize what does it mean to be hard and all. For now, it is promised to us that the graph that is given to us is the tree. Okay. And now in a tree, we want to find the size of the largest independent set. Okay. Want to do this using a dynamic program. Problem clear to everyone?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Good. Okay. So now we were given just a plain old tree. Now what we'll do is that we are going to declare any vertex of this graph, the tree that we have to be root. Okay. So this is our root. Let's call this R. Okay. Now that you have made a root, we'll talk about subtrees. Right. Now your graph is something like this. Okay. And also let us say that IU is the size of the largest independent set which is at U. Okay. So let's say you come in this way, you find the vertex U over here. Okay. And then the largest independent set of this tree, this subgraph, okay, that is rooted at U. You call that IU. Is IU clear to everyone? The definition of IU.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
And what is our goal then? What do we want to find? I of what?
Sir, I of the root is the question. Right?
R, right?
I of the vertex V that we like
Yeah,
declared as the root.
exactly. We are calling this R. So we are want to find IR, right?
So this tree is like the way we've picturized it. Is it unique? Is it not ambiguous?
So your tree depends on the root that you choose.
But once the root is selected, this the BFS structure, all of them are the same because it's the whole graph is a tree, right?
Yeah, I
Yes.
mean, depth first structure is the same. Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, breadth first structure is the same. Okay. Let's not
Right.
worry about that. Let's focus on this one in
Okay.
interest of time. Okay. Fine.
Okay.
Okay. So this vertex was U, and we all know that what is the meaning of IU. Okay. So now we want to come up with a recurrence relation to solve this problem. Here's the recurrence relation. Okay. So now let us look at a root U. Okay. This root is going to have several children, right? And also these children will have several more children, which are going to be, let's call them grandchildren of U. Fine. So what is the size of the maximum independent set in U? Okay. So there are two cases. Don't look at this recurrence for now. Let me just explain the two cases to you. First case can happen is that when the maximum independent set rooted at U, I mean it. So let me just write it. Maximum independent set rooted at U can, two cases, contain U, do not contain U. Right?
Yes, sir.
Fine. If it contains U, okay, and you know that this graph is a tree, that means none of its children can be a part of the maximum independent set. Else there will be
Yes.
an edge, right?
Right.
Then what do you want to do? You want to find out the maximum independent set of all the grandchildren of U. Okay, here. Find the maximum independent set here, 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 and so on, and sum them over. Okay, these are disjoint, right? They're different
Yes, sir.
trees. Okay, is this part clear to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Other thing that can happen is that we covered this case, right? It does not contain U. Okay, the maximum independent set does not contain U. In that case, you look at every child of U and sum over the size of the maximum independent set. Okay.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Fine. And then just you take, like always, take max over these two possibilities that can happen. Okay, and this reconciliation gives you your solution. The reconciliation clear to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Great. Now what we want to do is that we want to come up with a efficient scheme to store the solutions of our subproblems, right? In order to solve. So there are many subproblems again, like there is an overlapping structure of the subproblems. Want to efficiently store it to solve our full problem. Okay, we wanted to solve IR, where R was the root. Right. Okay. And these are the two questions that when we answer, we'll be able to do this. First question is, how many subproblems are solved?
So the number of vertices.
Exactly. Okay. And how many times the solution to each subproblem is used? Okay. So see, let's say you had some vertex R S here. Okay.
How many times is a problem is what?
So solution, yeah, I'm just elaborating that a little bit. Okay.
So at
So
most
let's
two
say
times, right? Like one as a children and one as a grandchildren.
yeah, once more actually. Say you have computed okay, IS. Okay, fine. So one could imagine that we are making this tree bottom up. First of all, we filled out the value of the roots, optimum value of the roots. Oh, sorry, leaves, which was all zeros. Okay. Then you went to the parents of the leaves. You filled out their optimum value, and so on. Okay. At some point, you reached the vertex S. Okay, and let's say you figure out the value IS. Okay, and then later on, when you proceed upwards, okay, upward the tree, okay, because these are the smaller problems which you combine to get the solution of the bigger problem for the root. When you proceed upward the tree, then how many times are you going to use this solution of this vertex S at max?
So when we call its parent as well as its grandparent.
Yeah. In other words, yeah, exactly. You call it parents and one more time actually, just to be a bit more careful. You also, when you were calculating this, then also you figure out this value, right?
So just one confusion. So in the upper right, you draw the graph, and in the children, for in the suppose I consider the leftmost children of you, child of you, then you will not be we will not consider you anymore, right?
Sorry, if you consider what? I did not get your question. See, okay,
So,
we started with you. Consider the leftmost child of you, and then what did you do after this?
yes, so the leftmost child, so you is not the child anymore. I mean, so
Yeah, you is not the child of this, right? I mean, you is the this vertex is the child of you. Okay.
Yeah.
So
yes,
see,
it's
I mean,
fine.
if
So
you're
we
confused a little
we
bit in the
created a
notation-
hierarchy of the,
yeah. So see, when you assign a vertex to be a root in a graph, right? Then what you do is that you say that, okay, now I have assigned a root. Now let me look at root to leaf paths. Okay.
yes, sir.
Fine. Okay. And then what will happen is that every vertex other than the leaf vertices will fall on some root to leaf path. Okay.
Yes, it's fine. Yes, sir.
You can just, in other words, you can just do you start with a root, do a depth first search. Okay. And then you assign a ordering, parent-child ordering in the fashion you visit, you do the DFS. Make sense?
Yes, it's fine. Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So these two questions, when you answer, you'll figure out that this runs in linear time, this algorithm. Okay. So finally, let me just finish by asking one more question. What is the data structure that you use to solve this problem? How will you store? Okay. So here we used an array, right? Here, and this weighted interval scheduling. Okay. This point we have used an array, right? Okay. So you have to store the solutions in some nice way, right? How will you store the solutions of your subproblems here? Okay. Yeah, so think about it a little bit. Yeah, answer is very natural. So I'm sure you
Sir?
can figure it out. Yeah. But
So we can sort the nodes in descending order of their distance from the root.
yeah, but that is that might work. I'm not sure, but something much more natural works, right? So think
Okay.
about it. You're already given your graph as a data structure, right? Perhaps you can try to use that, a copy of that.
Okay.
Yeah. So think a little bit.
Actually,
We
sir,
assign to each vertex the values. Like in BFS or DFS, we used to assign the discovery times to each vertex, right? So similarly, we can assign those values to the vertex itself. Like
Yeah, but you have to create a copy of that graph and do the same kind of stuff. Yeah, but you're on the right direction.
so
Okay.
we have to essentially use a tree.
Yeah, that would be a
think
nice
so.
way to do it, right?
so we can just start with a leaf node.
You
So-
can start with a leaf node, and because that is going to be the base case. So when is your induction? This recurrence. What is the base case of this recurrence? When you go down to the leaves, right?
Right.
And then you fill and what is the value of maximum independent set at the leaves? 1. Okay.
That's one. Right.
And then you go to one lab above and then figure this out. Fill this
Right. So
recurrence.
so that would be the decreasing order of the distance from the root.
But then do you need to do extra pre-processing? That is something to think about. Okay.
Okay. Right.
Yeah. Fine. Okay. And one more thing I would suggest is that, so Saurav told me that you guys also had another approach for this longest increasing subsequence problem. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So I would suggest, since we could not discuss it today, okay, so I would suggest to just read. So there is this book, very famous algorithm book by Dasgupta, okay, Papadimitriou and Vazirani, okay, algorithm. So there is this chapter on dynamic program. They've given a very short and nice solution to longest increasing subsequence. So you guys can have a look at
So what was the complexity
it.
of this algorithm?
Yeah,
written
so
in
this should be, if the graph is on n vertices, it should be order n.
or order n, linear
Yeah,
order.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Again, let me know if you have any problem in figuring this out.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Sir, just one thing, like, okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
regarding that, like the array P in the previous problem, weighted interval scheduling problem. So, like, I think, so, okay, so A5s are driven in increasing order. And to find that PJ for any J, what we need to do is essentially find the position of SJ in that in the increasing sequence of A5s.
Yeah, so you can, what you can do is that if you want to find PJ, then you just do a binary search.
Yeah, so like the okay, so the time clock complexity will essentially be log 1 plus log 2 plus log 3 total up to log n. So that turns out to be log of n factorial, that is n log n.
Yeah, so that is okay. Right?
So I was thinking.
So I mean, so to construct the P matrix, we need at least n log n time, I guess.
Okay. So let me.
So I don't know, like, okay, so the dynamic.
But there is also this thing, right? So I mean, do you need to compute this for all the what this is? All the intervals?
I think yes, because we don't know how the A5s are increasing. if the array of f is sorted, but the array of s is not. So we don't know, like, so for each s, we have to figure out the position of s in that f, like the array of f's. Like for example, okay, so first one is trivial, and the second, so
Mhm.
like, okay, so consider f3, let's say f1, f2, f3. So
Mhm.
what would be that p of 3? P of 3 would be, okay, so we have to figure out the position of s3 in that sequence f1, f2, f3. So if s3 lies between f2 and f3, then p of 3 will be 2. Okay, so similarly, when we next do it for 4, so we have to figure out the position of s4 in f1, f2, f3, f4. So we have to do it for all of the SIs, I guess. So
Perhaps, yeah. I have to think a little bit. I don't have a, yeah. Also, I don't know what is the correct time complexity here. Yeah.
So in
So
that
in
case,
n log n we can do, but question
so
is,
in
can
that
we
case,
do it
the
in?
whole algorithm will take n log n, because the dynamic programming is solved in linear time. So because we are filling up just an array of
Right.
size n plus 1. So this is the dominating part, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. But I'm still not sure. So maybe I can get back to you on this. Yeah.
Okay.
So what you're saying, I agree with that. It seems that you have to figure out the position of each SI among
Right.
the sorted Fs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if that is the case, then we'll have to spend n log n. But
Each SI among the like f1, f2 up to fi. So like
Yeah.
1 to I, just. So it becomes log 1 plus log 2 plus dot 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 up to log n. So this is actually log of n factorial.
Yeah, yeah,
Then if we use Starling or something like that,
yeah,
then
that is okay. That is fine.
Sir,
Calculation is not a thing here. The question is whether we can save.
yes, sir.
Okay, so let's.
So I was thinking, so if we know pj,
Yeah.
then for finding pj plus 1,
Hmm.
we just have to check the pj plus 1, pj in bracket plus 1, and
Okay.
so that s of
Okay, so let me
pj.
write it down. So you're saying want to find out pj? Do you want to check?
Yes, sir. So we know pj.
Okay, known.
Then we want to find pj plus 1.
Okay.
So what we need to check, we just need to check if pj plus 1, p then j into bracket, then plus 1, and we will check it, and we will compare it with the s of pj. Sorry, s of
Okay, let's think about this a little bit. Okay.
yes, I think we can do something like this.
like FIs are sorted, but SIs are not. So S can be in anything, any order, any arbitrary thing. So we don't have as such any information.
Yeah.
About that.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Because I think
SIs are
we
smaller
need
than
to
FIs. So
or-
that is all you know. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we
Okay.
have to check. Yeah, you have to search it for. Yeah. Okay.
Search it for all the previous things. When we are at the ith level, we have to search SI for all the previous i's because.
Okay. Yeah. So I don't think then we can do something better.
Okay. So yeah. So let's think about this a little. So yeah, still I agree with what we are talking about. Still. So that is one way to search these things. Other ways to use good data structures and all. So that is also one. Yeah. Okay. Other than this, everything like the idea and how things are happening is clear, right? What data structure should you use? This problem made it clear, right?
Yes,
so
sir. We can use
all
a
of you are
tree.
comfortable with the recurrence, right? Recurrence part is clear.
Yes,
You can
sir.
identify the sub problems that you need to store. Okay. The question of how to store it is often it is an array or a 2x2 array or the given data structure of your input. In this case, it was graph. Use that data structure. So that is how you can efficiently store. If you read this one, this Dasgupta's longest increasing subsequence, this where to store will become more clear. So they have used a DAG approach, directed acyclic graph approach, to solve this longest increasing subsequence. Also, data structure is made a bit clear. Okay. So yeah, try to read this. Okay, fine.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Also,
let's
sir,
meet.
I think there can be a more elegant way to compute PJ. I'm just suggesting, like, I'm not sure, but I think that what we can do is, like, after we have think of a line, okay, and think of, let's finishing points as like you mark finishing points F1 to Fn, and then you have some starting points, okay, and we know that F1s to Fns are increasing, but S1s to whatever, there is there is less knowledge.
Okay.
So what we can do is, I think what we can do is, before we calculate compute, so this is just an idea, we can start merging intervals. Okay, for example, what I'm trying to say is, let's say if two intervals, say Pi and Pj, they will be disjoint, right?
Okay, so what I suggest is that it will be nice if some of you meet and discuss this.
Okay, sir. Okay.
And I'm very interested in knowing the solution, so please let me know if possible. Okay.
Sure, sir. I think a merging thing might work. It's just like how you compare to calendars or something. I think I'm not sure. But I can design one.
Yeah, sure. And other than this tutorial time, if you want to meet to discuss these sort of things, I'll be happy. Okay.
Sir, thank you, sir.
Okay. Okay. So let's meet next week then. Okay. Bye.
Okay, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.